Welcome to the story. Don't forget to like, subscribe and support me. The stars glistened in the void as the Excelsior slid into the system, its hull gleaming against the blackness of space. Commander Alex Reyes stood at the helm, hands clasped behind his back, staring out through the viewing port as the long-lost ship came into view. The Horizon, the colony ship that had disappeared more than 50 years ago, hung lifeless in the distance. It looked like a ghost ship, drifting silently against the backdrop of distant stars. "Commander, we're approaching docking range," Lieutenant Harris said, her voice tight with a mixture of anticipation and dread. Reyes nodded. "Hold steady. No sudden moves. We don't know what we're dealing with here." The Horizon had sent out a distress signal just a week ago, its first communication since disappearing en route to the outer colony systems. For decades, it had been assumed destroyed, its 3,000 passengers lost to the unknown dangers of deep space. But now, it was here, broadcasting a weak but persistent signal that had summoned the rescue team from the United Colonial Federation. Reyes turned to his team, standing at the ready behind him. There was Dr. Elena Carter, the team's biologist, and one of the brightest minds when it came to alien species. She was quiet, but her sharp eyes missed nothing. Next to her was Sergeant Marcus Lane, a burly Marine who had seen more combat than most of them would care to remember. His experience would be critical in case things went south. Lieutenant Harris, their tech expert, was nervously tapping on her datapad, monitoring the ship's systems. And there was the newest member, Private Ian Davison, fresh out of the academy and already looking like he regretted every decision that had led him here. Reyes spoke firmly. "Listen up, we're going in to assess the situation and render aid if possible. But we've had no communication from the crew of the Horizon. Keep your eyes open. We don't know what condition the ship is in or what happened to its crew. Stay close and stay sharp." The Excelsior docked with the Horizon in eerie silence. There was no welcoming committee, no sign of life. The docking procedures completed automatically, a smooth, clinical connection. The airlock hissed as it opened, revealing the dimly lit corridor beyond. Reyes stepped forward first, weapon at the ready. His boots echoed off the cold metal floor as the team entered the ship. The corridor stretched out in front of them, lined with doorways that led to empty rooms. The place felt abandoned. A layer of dust coated the floor, undisturbed for years. But the air felt strong, thick, heavy with a strange, organic scent that set his teeth on edge. "What the hell happened here?" Sergeant Lane muttered, his voice low. Dr. Carter knelt down, running her fingers along the wall, where something that looked like veins were embedded into the metal. They pulsed faintly, a sickly green light throbbing in time with a rhythm that felt disturbingly alive. "This isn't human technology," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "It apostrophes ... biological." Reyes clenched his jaw, his instincts screaming that something was very wrong. He activated his comms. "Harris, get the ship's logs. See if there's anything on record about what happened." Harris nodded, moving swiftly to a nearby terminal. The others spread out, cautiously checking their surroundings. The corridor felt like a tomb, the quiet pressing in on them from all sides. Reyes' heart pounded in his chest, though he kept his face impassive. Years of training had taught him to remain calm in the face of the unknown. But this was different. After a few moments, Harris spoke up. "I've got the logs, sir." Last entry is from Captain Evelyn Hart, dated 26 years ago. She talks about an encounter with an unknown vessel just before all contact was lost. The rest of the logs are corrupted. Something's wiped most of the data. "Unknown vessel," Reyes repeated, narrowing his eyes. "Alien, from the sounds of it." They didn't get a clear look, but whatever it was, a broken bar, it wasn't friendly. Suddenly, a noise echoed down the corridor, a sharp, scraping sound that made the hairs on the back of Reyes' neck stand on end. The team spun around, weapons raised, eyes scanning the shadows. "Movement!" Davison shouted, pointing down the hall. Reyes signaled for them to advance slowly. They crept forward, their footsteps barely audible as they approached the source of the noise. The corridor led them deeper into the ship, where the walls seemed to change. The pulsing veins became thicker, more prominent, and the scent of decay grew stronger. It was as if the ship itself had become infected by something alive. They reached a set of doors that slid open with a groan, revealing a large chamber beyond. Inside, the sight that greeted them made Ray's stomach lurch. The room was filled with the colonists, or at least, what was left of them. Their bodies had been twisted, warped into grotesque shapes. They were still human in form, but their flesh had fused with some sort of alien material, their skin stretched tight over unnatural, biomechanical appendages. They moved sluggishly, their eyes glazed over with a milky white film. "My God," Dr. Carter breathed. "They've been transformed." "By what?" Reyes asked, his voice tight. Carter scanned the room, her mind working rapidly to piece together the horror in front of them. "This is some kind of parasitic infestation. These colonists have been genetically altered, their DNA overwritten by something alien." The colonists, if they could still be called that, it did not appear hostile at first. They shuffled around aimlessly, unaware of the rescue team's presence. But as they ventured further into the room, one of them turned its head, its eyes locking onto Ray's. "Commander," Harris began, but it was too late. The creature lunged, letting out a guttural, inhuman shriek. Ray's reacted instantly, firing a shot that connected with the thing's chest, but it barely slowed down. The colonist turned. The creature clawed at him, its strength far beyond human. Sergeant Lane opened fire, mowing down the creature, but the noise alerted the others. The colonists, as if waking from a deep slumber, turned as one. Their movements became coordinated, faster, as they rushed toward the team with frightening speed. "Fall back," Reyes shouted, firing into the horde. "Get out of the room, now!" The team retreated into the corridor, blasting at the approaching creatures as they ran. The door slid shut behind them, sealing off the room, but the pounding on the other side told them it wouldn't hold for long. "They're all infected," Carter said, her face pale. "The entire crew." They apostrophe re some kind of hive. "All connected," Reyes swore under his breath. This was more than a rescue mission now. It was a nightmare. The colonists weren't just victims, they were part of something much larger, something far more dangerous. As they caught their breath, a voice crackled over their comms. It was the ship's Sci-Aegis. "Commander Reyes, I must warn you. The colonists are part of a greater experiment. This ship is a testing ground for an alien species known as the Sinew. They have been observing the transformation of the crew for decades." Reyes stared at the comms unit in disbelief. "Experiment? What kind of experiment?" The eye's voice was cold and mechanical. "The Sinew view organic life as raw material. They modify and reshape species to serve their needs. The colonists were selected as test subjects. The Sinew control their evolution through a central hive mind, which must be destroyed to end the experiment." Reyes felt a chill run down his spine. "Where is this hive mind?" "It resides in the reactor core," Aegis replied. "But be warned, the hive mind has fully integrated with Captain Evelyn Hart." Commander Reyes felt a knot form in his stomach. Captain Hart, the woman who had been entrusted with the lives of 3,000 colonists, was now fused with the very thing that had destroyed them. A chilling silence fell over the group as they processed the weight of the situation. The colonists weren't just lost, they were part of an alien experiment, and Hart had become their puppet queen. He clicked on his comm again. "What happens if we destroy the hive mind?" Aegis hesitated for a brief moment, as if calculating the response. "The colonists connected to the hive mind will cease to function. Their transformation is irreversible. The remaining hybrids will die." Carter's face tightened. "So, we're not rescuing anyone?" Ray's jaw clenched. This isn't a rescue anymore. This is containment." The pounding on the door behind them grew louder. The hybrids on the other side were relentless, hammering at the metal with enough force to buckle it. "We need to move," Sergeant Lane said, his voice hard. "If we stay here, we're dead." Reyes nodded, pushing the sickening reality of the situation to the back of his mind. There was no saving the colonists. The best they could do was end the experiment, destroy the hive mind, and keep this horror from spreading beyond the ship. "Let's go," he ordered, leading them down the corridor toward the ship's reactor core. As they moved through the darkened halls of the horizon, the ship seemed to close in around them. The walls were pulsing, alive with alien growths. Veins of the same sickly green light throbbed along the ceiling and floor, as though the ship itself had been infected by the sinew's biological technology. The air felt thick with decay and the stench of organic matter rotting in the dark. Private Davison's voice wavered as he spoke, barely a whisper. "Do you think she's still in there?" "The captain, I mean?" Reyes didn't answer. He didn't want to speculate. Whatever remained of Captain Hart was likely twisted beyond recognition, a mere shadow of the woman she once was. If she even existed at all anymore. The corridors became narrower as they approached the reactor core. The alien growths grew denser, covering the walls and ceiling in a web of organic tissue. Carter scanned the area, her readings confirming what Reyes already knew. This was where the hive mind resided. The core chamber doors slid open with a hiss, revealing a massive room dominated by the ship's reactor. But the reactor was no longer just a machinea, it had been overtaken by the alien infestation. Tendrils of biomechanical material snaked across the reactor's surface, pulsating with energy. At the center of it all, suspended in the air by thick cords of alien matter, was Captain Evelyn Hart. Her body had been transformed beyond recognition. Her limbs were elongated, fused with the tendrils that connected her to the hive mind. Her face, pale and gaunt, was stretched tight over her skull, her eyes glowing with an eerie green light. She no longer looked human, as she was something else entirely, something alien. The hive mind was here, in the form of what had once been Captain Hart. Hart's eyes flickered open as the team entered the room. Her voice, distorted and mechanical, echoed through the chamber. "You should not have come." Reyes stepped forward, weapon drawn but lowered. "Captain Hart?" Her eyes focused on him, though there was no recognition in them. "There is no Captain Hart. I am the hive," Carter whispered beside him. "She's completely integrated into the alien network." Reyes felt a cold dread settle over him. "What is the purpose of this experiment? Why did the sinew do this?" "Harda, or rather," the Hivea tilted her head. "The sinew seek to perfect life, to reshape it. Your species was deemed malleable, useful. The experiment will continue, and you will join us." Before Reyes could react, the alien tendrils that connected Hart to the reactor surged forward, lashing out toward the team. The room erupted into chaos as the hive mind launched its attack. Reyes and the others opened fire, their weapons flashing in the darkened chamber, but the tendrils were faster too fast. One of the tendrils wrapped around Davison's leg, yanking him off his feet. He screamed as it dragged him toward the center of the room, where the alien growths pulsed with life. Reyes fired at the tendril, but the bullets barely slowed it down. "Cut him loose," Lane shouted, pulling out a knife and slashing at the tendril. The alien material recoiled, releasing Davison, but more tendrils were coming from all directions, seeking to ensnare them all. Reyes' heart pounded as he fired at the reactor, trying to sever the connections between Hart and the hive mind. "We need to destroy the core." The team focused their fire on the reactor, but the hive mind wasn't going down without a fight. The tendrils lashed out wildly, and the room filled with the eerie sound of Hart's voice, echoing through their comms. "You cannot stop the experiment. You are already part of it." Reyes gritted his teeth, ignoring the voice as he aimed for the reactor's exposed power conduits. If they could overload the reactor, they could destroy the hive mind, but it would also destroy the ship. There would be no going back. "Cover me!" he shouted, rushing toward the control panel near the reactor. Carter and Lane fired at the tendrils, trying to keep them at bay, but they were relentless. One of the tendrils wrapped around Carter's arm, pulling her toward the reactor. She screamed as it tightened, threatening to crush her. Reyes reached the control panel and began inputting the emergency override codes. The reactor hummed to life, its systems preparing for a forced overload. Sweat dripped down his forehead as he worked, his hands moving quickly across the controls. The hive mind's voice grew louder, more frantic. "You will not stop the sinew. This is your future." The reactor's alarm blared, signaling the countdown to overload. Rage pulled out his comm. "We need to move, now, we've got 60 seconds." Carter freed herself from the tendril's grip, and Lane helped her to her feet. Together, they ran toward the exit as the reactor began to shake, the overload building toward critical mass. The hive mind screeched in fury, its tendrils flailing wildly as it tried to stop them, but it was too late. The reactor was seconds away from detonation. The team sprinted through the corridors, the ship shuddering around them as the overload built. The walls seemed to come alive, the alien growths writhing and pulsating as the hive mind struggled to maintain control. Behind them, they could hear Hart's voice, no longer coherent, just a garbled mess of alien and human sounds. They reached the docking bay just as the reactor went critical. The explosion rocked the ship, sending a shock wave through the hull. Reyes slammed the emergency release button, and the Excelsior detached from the horizon, speeding away as the colony ship was consumed in a brilliant flash of light. The team sat in silence as they watched the horizon disintegrate from a safe distance, its remains scattered across the void. The stars seemed indifferent to the destruction, twinkling as if nothing had changed. Reyes lowered his head, exhaustion washing over him. The colonists were gone. The experiment was over. But the Sinua, the aliens who had engineered this nightmare, were still out there, watching, waiting. Carter broke the silence, her voice soft. "Do you think the Sinew will come for us?" Reyes didn't answer right away. He stared out at the stars, wondering how many more horrors like the horizon were hidden in the depths of space. "They've already started," he said quietly. "We're just another part of their experiment now." As the Excelsior sped away from the wreckage, Reyes knew this wasn't the end. The Sinew wouldn't stop, and humanity would have to be ready for whatever came next. The lost starship was just the beginning.